From our homes all across the tri-state area, we are pleased to bring you this special edition of Bobcat Breakdown exclusively on the Q30 Television YouTube channel. I'm Jacob Resnick, and joining me on the virtual desk are Joe LoGrippo, the president of Q30, and Will Fowler. Will is the chairman of the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network. And today we're talking all things fall sports. And before we jump in, I want to quickly run through what the past few months have been like since we were last live on the air. We were all off Quinnipiac's campus by March 7th, and the MAAC basketball tournament started and ended within a span of about 3 days. And we've just seen a horrifying number of coronavirus cases, particularly deaths in the United States. And all of that led up to the news from last week that the start of the fall sports season in the MAAC would be delayed. All non-conference competitions, volleyball and soccer, have been canceled. So guys, amidst everything that has happened over the last 4+ months and the inherent risks still present with any social gathering, Joe, I'll start with you. How much of the focus right now needs to be on bringing college sports back versus making sure the country is in a good place before we do so?
Yeah, obviously you want to make sure that the health and safety is all good to go. I don't think that sports should have, be at the top of the pedestal right now. Obviously you want to control the country first with, cases going up, down, sideways every single day. So you obviously want to take care of that first. And we see it now in professional sports where the NFL and MLB Players Association were upset or are upset, depending on which league you're talking about the health and safety guidelines that are being provided to them right now. So it's definitely a tough situation, but hopefully they can figure it all out.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because you need to be able to separate collegiate athletics from professional athletics. It's two completely different realms. On the professional side of things, you've got athletes in a bubble safely, technically shouldn't be leaving. Some of them we know have since left or invited people into the bubble. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. And also with professional athletics, you're discussing players' livelihoods, their contracts, their salaries. That's not necessarily the case at the NCAA level. So as much as you would like to get it back as quickly as you possibly can, for a number of reasons, you can't, because the impetus is not there, because collegiate athletes are not being paid. They don't have to support their families and their livelihoods based on paying collegiate athletics. And the big thing, I think, is that the NBA, the MLB, the MLS, they're all in a bubble safely in Florida, in Utah, wherever it may be. You can't do that with collegiate athletics. As helpful as it would be to play conference-only schedules, which you've already seen from collegiate football and most Division I through Division III conferences, if they haven't canceled their seasons already, there are still some health and safety risks taking into account when you only play conference-only schedules, because you're still bouncing from site to site to site. So as beneficial as it is to not have conference crossover, you're still traveling to certain places, and then there's always the off chance if a player has it and transfers it to a player on another team, and then it gets within the student body. There's a whole wealth of risks still involved based on where we are right now at the NCAA. So I think Joe said it. You'd like to get it back as fast as you can, but right now, to use a sports term, we should be keeping collegiate athletics on the bench for the time being.
And you made a good point there that the student body from these schools is another element that has to obviously be considered, because at the end of the day, student athletes are just that, students who happen to be athletes. And these athletes are living and going to classes and eating with the rest of the student population. So you can't really isolate them from everyone else, and they're going to have the same risks that everyone else does. So there is a bit of an ethical dilemma there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we've seen the MAAC take steps to protect not only the athletes, but also the student body. Part of the announcement that they came out with last week was, there would be no non-conference schedule, but also that the basketball teams wouldn't be able to use school facilities in the summer. They would only be able to start using those courts and the weight rooms and all that once the entire student body returns. So we're seeing protections for not only the athletes themselves, but for all the people that the athletes encounter on the campus over the course of a day.
And Will, that kind of leads into my next question, talking about the announcement that the MAAC put out last week. You've been on top of this story literally from the beginning, considering that you were at the basketball tournament in Atlantic City when everything shut down. You were in the room when Commissioner Rich Enzer canceled the rest of the tournament in the spring season. And you put out a quote from Commissioner Enzer on Friday, and this was with regard to the factors that went into the decision to cancel non-conference competition in the fall and postpone summer activities for basketball, like you mentioned. Well, how well would you say that Rich Enzer and the conference have navigated this difficult situation?
Yeah, the first word that I use, and I've been using it since March, and I'll use it now, is unprecedented, just because everything that's happened is so unprecedented. We have nothing, quite literally nothing, to compare what's happened in the last 6 months to. It's unique in every sense of the word. I think the MAAC, being a mid-major Division I conference with no major source of revenue other than postseason basketball tournaments, is doing about as well as they can. You don't want to straight up axe the season because like I said before, then there's hardly any revenue coming in for the league. That shouldn't be a priority, but certainly from a business decision needs to be weighed. And that's why we can see conferences like the Ivy League who don't necessarily need that crutch, or the more popular Division I conferences, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12. Those conferences can maybe turn to cancellation a little bit quicker than the MAAC can. That being said, we obviously know that the MAAC is concerned about player safety. If they weren't, they wouldn't have come out with that statement last weekend. They would have said, no, we'll wait until August and we'll wait until kickoff, and then we'll see what happens then. I think they're doing about as well as they can given the circumstance and given their status within the NCAA. I assume they would like to wait as long as they can before officially axing the season. I think that may be where we're headed. I don't want to speculate, but based off of the events of the past 2 or 3 weeks, I think that may be where we're headed. I don't think the MAAC will do it until they absolutely have to. And when you're a mid-major conference in Division I think that's the best mindset to have, because you want to do everything in your power to make it happen, but it has to be safe to do so, obviously.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I think the MAAC has done a pretty good job so far. They're not moving too fast, like you said. They're not rushing into anything. They're taking their time and examining their options. They obviously haven't canceled any seasons yet, but they are restricting practices and things of that nature. But I think that they've done a real good job. I wonder if they'll take any professional, they'll kind of use professional leagues as an example. Maybe they can bubble their players. I'm not sure how that would work, but if they could use some, like, let's see how the MLB works out, see how NBA, NHL, NFL, and so if they could use professional leagues as an example, maybe they can kick off their season that way too.
I think the revenue point is super interesting because the MAAC does not sponsor college football. College football
Right.
is the biggest moneymaker of all of collegiate athletics. So their interests are really tied up in basketball. They can kind of afford to wait a little bit and see kind of what other conferences are doing, and that won't get started until a little later. But for the MAAC, these quote unquote smaller sports like soccer and volleyball, that's really where their interests lie. Joe, I'm going to ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a student athlete or a MAAC coach. How difficult do you think it is to navigate this unknown at this time when they don't really have much any more information than we do about where their seasons are heading?
Yeah, it's got to be super difficult. I don't think there's anything easy about it because the sport they play, they've been doing it their whole lives. And when you take it away from them, now they're kind of in an unknown area that they haven't been in a while. And they're not sure if, like, even we saw seniors get their last season taken away. And for some of them, that's the last time they'll ever play the sport competitively. So it's definitely got to be difficult. There's a lot of unknown. And, they just got to hope for the best and kind of take it from there, because there's really nothing they can do. Just got to sit back and watch what happens.
Yeah, we've been trying at QBSN to put ourselves in the shoes of athletes and coaches just by talking with them. And it's the resounding answer over and over and over again is you can't plan anything like this. You have to take it day by day until you hear word, because this is one of those situations where if you make a plan today to have a practice, for example, in 2 weeks, you don't know what could happen tomorrow or in 2 hours. You'll drive yourself up a wall if you try to predict what happens farther out than within the next 10 minutes. I mean, it's one of those things where you can only plan based off of what you already know. So it's got to be one of those situations where you almost feel helpless because you can't plan what happens in the future because you have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
Let's kind of wrap it up with what I thought would be an interesting question. Let's say theoretically there are no sports in the fall. From a Quinnipiac perspective, Give me one or two storylines that you guys were looking forward to follow. And Joe, you can go first.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of step out of the box a little bit. And it involves all three of us rather than athletes themselves. But I'm interested to see how the sports media world is going to function, especially the college sports media world is going to function if sports do not, in fact, happen. Obviously, at Q30 TV, we have news and entertainment. It's going to be interesting to see how QBSN can kind of work around. But obviously, you guys are doing a great job right now interviewing some former athletes and getting their thoughts and things like that. So I'm kind of interested to see how sports media world is going to function without any sports.
Well, my answer seems kind of straightforward and basic after that one. I stuck to on the field. Obviously, one of the teams that I've had a great time covering in my first 3 years of being a student at Quinnipiac is this men's soccer team. Obviously, as a soccer fan, but I find this team so interesting as well. The guy last year was Eamon Whalen. He's out the door, and the center back duo of Connor McCoy and Yeppe Haire, they're both out the door. This roster overwhelmingly, really last year to this year, didn't have a huge amount of roster turnover. Actually, most of its starting 11 members are back for the 2020 season, if there is going to be one. But the players that did leave were hugely instrumental. I was very interested in seeing how players like Tomasz Vikula would have filled that gap. Brog Asen as well is somebody who I think may be able to fill in for Eamon Whalen as play as like a false nine role. Center backs, Henry Wygand played and started last year as a first-year player. Players like Doman Bozic, Griffin Scalia, maybe they're ready to take that next step. I would have been very interested to see how Eric DaCosta would have managed this roster turnover with not a huge amount of players leaving, but the ones that did leave were some of the first names on the team sheet for DaCosta.
Talk about a little bit the volleyball team, which would have been or still is as of now entering year 2 of the Kyle Robinson era. First season was kind of didn't really know what to expect coming into the year. They obviously had their struggles under the previous regime and had some success getting through the playoffs and not able to eclipse Fairfield. They were the powerhouse and have been. But certainly an excellent first season under Kyle Robinson, really getting the most out of his players, Maggie Baker, Morgan Sherwin, lots of players who really took the next step to help out the team. Alejandra Rodriguez was the MAAC libero of the year under him, and they ended up making it to the MAAC championship, ultimately losing, but certainly a big step forward for the volleyball program, and I think things are certainly trending up in the most positive way for that squad. But thank you guys so much for joining us. Glad we got to do a little midsummer Bobcat breakdown as we kind of navigate the unknown from all of our perspectives. Be sure to keep up with the latest at theqbsn.com and at q30tv.com. You follow both of our organizations on Twitter at QBSN and at Q30 Sports. For Will Fowler and Joe LoGrippo, I'm Jacob Resnick. We'll see you next time.